Thank you so much for being here today. This is day one of the Start Now Entrepreneurship Camp, and I'm really excited to have two amazing alumni with us today. They're incredible. I've worked with them both individually and collectively, and they're really, really inspiring. So just want to give you a little bit of background on who they are and then ask some really important questions. And at the end of this conversation, we will open up the floor for our peer leaders and incoming students, freshmen and transfers, to ask their own questions of these two really, really awesome panelists. But before we do that, again, I just want to thank everybody for being here. To be online is amazing just to see you all. Keeps our spirits up a lot. But with that said, I would love to introduce our two panelists of the day. So we have Miss Lauren LaChant. Maybe she could wave to you guys. Lauren is a program manager at Comcast and has a strong background in sales and marketing. She has her degree in entrepreneurship and innovation from the Close School. And she is an amazing fashion designer who I hope to work with soon with my dance company. So I'm really happy to have Lauren here. And then we also have Elliot Levy, and he is passionate and devoted about the startup process. He's a former medical device founder with a degree in entrepreneurship and innovation, also from Drexel University. And he's always looking to connect with health and tech entrepreneurs, founders, venture funds, enterprise health systems, passionate people. So that is Elliot. And again, we're just really, really honored to have you both here. So if you could just take a moment, each of you, to kind of share who you are, a fun fact, something about you that's unique.
I'll start. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren. So as Roger said, I'm a program manager at Comcast, and actually that was my co-op position. I was working in new product trials at Comcast as my co-op, and then I eventually met a few people and moved onto a different position, being more of working in the broader product trials and more starting from start to finish with the different products that come in. And I graduated last year in 2019, and I love taking part in all the closed school events. I love coming back and talking to closed school students. I feel like my experience at Drexel really helped me to get where I am today. And I've changed so much from when I was a freshman to even my sophomore year and then my junior year. The closed school really helped me to become the person that I am today and to get where I am in my professional career. Fun fact, I have two dogs and I love dogs so much. I have a little Yorkie poo and then a little Yorkie, and the Yorkie just turned 6 months. So it's a fun fact about me. I love to design cosplays. If anybody knows what cosplaying is, I love fashion design, and I've been working on a Wonder Woman cosplay actually that I'm super proud of, and I just have to put a back panel on the skirt because it looks weird otherwise now, but that's one of my hobbies. So I think that's all you asked, right?
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Yeah.
Elliot.
I'll jump in there. I'm Elliot. For me, I actually graduated with Lauren this past July in 2019. So we're both recent grads here. But I think worth noting is I didn't start at Drexel. I started sort of an economics major at Emory in Atlanta, and I kind of caught the entrepreneurial bug, so to speak, launch it with Chuck Sacco probably back in 2014. And from there, right, I mean, really kind of decided that was the path that I wanted to be on. So I transferred to the closed school, loved everything that they were going, wanted to dive in pretty much deep to entrepreneurship and have no regrets in doing so. I think at a high level, my concentration was social enterprise. I've tried two ventures previously. Roger noted a medical device company called Brain Phones, pair of headphones with built-in brain stimulation, and a jewelry venture tangentially aligned to fashion, sort of around 3D design and user-friendly product building. But right now I work at Dream Adventures. We're a strategic Series A co-investor. What makes us unique is we sort of operate part accelerator and part venture fund. And so nice to get a chance to kind of see a ton of companies on the front lines, and I'm an associate on the health tech team. So we really do, invest in real estate, security, and health. But health is my core focus, and certainly loving what I'm doing here. And actually, one fun fact. Okay. Here's one probably no one will ever say. I ride an electric unicycle. I'm an electric unicycle enthusiast. Chances are there's probably only about 10 in the city. So if you do see somebody riding by at about 25 miles an hour, too fast to say something, chances are that's probably me. But yeah, that's a little unique facet about me.
I love it. I'll be looking for you out there.
Yeah, you'll see me. You'll see me.
This is great. So the way this is kind of structured, guys, we'll be asking some past questions, a few about your present, and then a few for the future, just to give some inspiration in this COVID world that we're in. All right. So we're going to start with the past. So take us back to your freshman year. You may have been 18, you may not have been, but each of you could just describe what was it like, coming to campus, picking your courses, meeting your professors. What was that Drexel experience like for you?
Wow. A freshman year, actually, I did not know what to expect, because I know that I had a lot of friends that were coming to like a very traditional campus, like a very traditional like nursing major, or a very traditional business major. And I was coming in with the close school, and I was very excited to see just like where this would take me. And freshman year, I found that because I was in, I don't know if you guys have the ELLC now. No, not anymore, but it was a living learning community. So a bunch of entrepreneurship students were living together in one dorm. And that really helped me to like kick off meeting everybody and getting to know everybody and getting to know everybody's individual ideas. And we were constantly interacting with each other. And then there was also the Biata Institute, where we could go at any time to talk with our professors and talk with fellow entrepreneurs. Even people not in the close school would come and share ideas and talk. And that was really a way that I found myself just immediately jumping in and getting immersed in the entrepreneurship community at Drexel. And that was such a great part of my experience as a freshman. And then of course there were my great teachers, and I remember coming to like every class my freshman year and staying a little bit after to talk a little about the courses, or just talk about our entrepreneurship adventures that were going on. And of course we had Debbie would go to, and we'd talk to about everything. Shout out to you, Debbie, I love you. And so my freshman year turned out, it was a little scary in the beginning, but it turned out being super great because of such a great community that the entrepreneurship school brought for us.
Yeah, to echo that. So I obviously didn't start as a freshman at Drexel. I probably came in sort of in between sophomore and junior, but I think for me, freshman year was really kind of about getting my feet wet in as many areas as possible. You can't make mistakes, right? Because I feel like you just have to try new things, and you just have to kind of get your tentacles into as many programs and opportunities as you can. But also something I think that is true of the closed school throughout sort of your time there is the collective energy, right? And I think it's interesting because you start at another school, right? And there's this huddling up together because you're all starting at the same point. But then people go on to do other majors and join other programs, and sometimes it's easy to lose that collective energy. And so from the closed school, I think facilitates that because it's a small group. You're going to be with the same people for the next 3-4 years. So that works to your advantage. But in general, I feel like as a freshman, you can't mess up, get your feet wet as much as possible, and take advantage of the collective energy, because at other points in your career and maybe at other points academically, you might not have a strong structure to bond you. So
that's a great point. Thank you for mentioning that. It's all about the bonding too, like you said, inside the classroom, outside. It's important. So again, you guys are still freshmen, right? And we're going down memory lane here, of course. And you guys are starting to take your courses, and you're scared. We all would be, right? First year student. how do the closed school courses kind of differ from other schools within the university? And then what is your advice for freshmen to get the most that they can out of our academic programming?
Yeah. So I think, like, at least in my opinion, one of the big ways the closed school is different is also true of entrepreneurship, is that there's not often a clear right answer, right? And with technical heavy classes, math, science, it's more black and white. You're right, you're wrong. But I think that is a harder answer to come to in entrepreneurship, right? And so that's one of those things that as a freshman, again, goes back to that last point in that you can't mess up. I think inherently in these classes, there's way more gray area, right? And so that is something that I think lends to your benefit, right? Because it's all more so about collaborating as opposed to competing, right? To get the highest grade. But a big difference, correct me if I'm wrong here, Lauren, but I think a big difference would be the group work, right? Group work would be like almost inherent, I think, in closed school courses, and probably a minority of non-closed school courses. So you get that a ton, and I'll, happy to touch on that more, but I do think that's super important. And what you're doing there actually will be in some ways the way you work when you're actually out in your career. So take it seriously.
I totally agree. There was a lot of group work, and a main difference that I found in my entrepreneurship courses was that there wasn't really as Elliot said, the correct answer. Like, you're not going to be taking a test and check off the correct answer in most of our projects. And I'm not a great test taker at all. So I was not looking forward to going to college and taking like a biology class that has biology exams or stuff like that. But these courses were really about being creative in collaboration. And I found that one of the most important things was keeping that entrepreneurial mindset, even when doing a project or entrepreneurial presentation that has a clear set of what to do and what to follow. Because even in, I know, Dr. Z's classes, I remember taking a lot that the people that would do the best would be the ones that stepped a little bit outside of the box and took it just that one step further than just following the prompts and doing what you're told. Doing that, you're really going to get a lot out of this whole closed school experience, is really taking what you have and bringing it to every project and bringing it to every group project, because having every different person bring in their own ideas just makes your project even better and helps you grow as an entrepreneur. So, yeah.
Amazing. So it's all about collaboration, of course, right? The teamwork aspect, but also having an entrepreneurial mindset. And I'm happy that you both alluded to that. I think a lot of times in our courses, people, they have a lot of questions, right? So even as we give a prompt, like, but what else? Tell us every detail. And again, that's not the entrepreneurial mindset. So I think as a freshman, it can be shocking sometimes, but I think as you progress throughout the courses, you get used to adding your own to what we're giving you, and it prepares you for the real world, as Elliot stated. You're going to have to do this as entrepreneurs, employees, or both. So I think it's great how you guys mentioned those two things.
Can I add something really quick?
Of course, please.
That is so true in even corporate America. There are little projects that we're given that you can bring even the slightest bit of entrepreneurship to, and it will change everything. It will change everybody's perspective, and it will add to even things that have been structured for years. And that's what's so great about this entrepreneurial mindset. You can add it to anything. And like I do, I really do in my my job from day to day.
And it's hard, and to piggyback on that, I think it's hard to know everything that you're eventually going to have to know to learn in these 4 years. And like that, I think, is an unfair challenge to put on yourself. So echoing what people are saying here, I think, like, if there's any one thing you have to leave knowing how to learn. Like undergrad and in the closed school, like you have, like that, it has to be able to teach you that. And as reference, right, I'm in health now, but 6 months before graduating, I couldn't have told you that I would have been working in health. So there's no possible way in my path that I could have adjusted my coursework in retrospect. But I think that it's the mindset, right? It's learning. And the job, Dream It, who I work for, they didn't come in expecting me to be a doctor, right? To know everything and every facet about health tech and subset of it, right? But what they did expect was that I knew how to learn and I could apply that same process to this new area. So right on, I think spot on here.
Thank you. You guys are reading my mind too. That kind of was a nice segue into what I was going to ask you. So it's a two-pronged question. So number one, closed school education. Right? What is the unique skill set that it provides to you that you can take beyond entrepreneurship? So if you decide not to start something, what's the unique skill set that our courses gives you? And then how are you applying it now in your current role or roles?
Yeah, I can take that one. Up to you. Yeah. So I think for me, it's interesting because we think about entrepreneurship, right? And there's almost this like clear, you go from A to B, B being like the startup. But I think ultimately it's about the startup mentality. And I think you can apply that to a lot of different things. Sounds like through our co-ops, we've been able to, one of my co-ops was Hamilton Lane, small 4-person fintech corporate innovation team within a 300-person company, right? And so I think like for me, primarily just opening that up, right? To be able to learn that and being open to where it goes because look, I'm somebody who says I want to start my own business, right? But for me, eventually I will go back to doing so. But again, I think if anything else, like I've taken that mentality to the opportunities that I've had. And that mentality is something that I don't think a lot of other college students have. So somebody else joined with me, another associate on the secure tech team, but her degree wasn't in entrepreneurship. So right off the bat, I mean, my depth of understanding of terminology, of theory, behind entrepreneurship, regardless of my successes, regardless of whether or not I could stand up and say, my company got acquired, or I built this company to this size. Technically, I understood the nuances of it. And that just gave me a leg up. I mean, I could run a whole lot faster. I started working at the end of January at Dream It, and I could run a whole lot faster because of it, right? So that probably is, again, echoing the same point, but it's important. You got to learn the process, you got to learn the theory and how to learn, and then you can apply it.
I completely agree. I think that learning how to learn and being very open to learning many different things was something that we learned a lot as an entrepreneur student. For example, I work in technology right now, and I never thought that I'd be working in technology. I thought I would be going into fashion and design, but then this opportunity allowed me to look at different aspects of different companies in different ways and have that entrepreneurial mindset when going in and looking at different parts of business. Because usually when you think of somebody that is going into business, studying like general business or studying something like, what are other majors? Like art majors go and they know that they're going to study art. You have a clear path of what you're going to be doing. And when you think of other companies that you could be working in, you don't really see yourself as working in that company because of what that company is. With entrepreneurship, you can place yourself in all different kinds of businesses, all different kinds of companies, and see what your different skills are in those companies and how you can bring your entrepreneurial mindset to those companies. And so that's like a super important thing that we learned. And I forgot, was the question like, what was the question again? Was it, what
were like the unique characteristics of our education, which you mentioned, and then how are you applying it today in your current work?
Right, so definitely that entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, just wanted to make sure I covered the question.
And even just like technical terms, not, you know, I guess maybe not technical, but surface level terms, right? Product market fit. What's the process of customer discovery? Keep in mind that most college students graduate not even knowing these terms, right? And let alone understanding the processes behind them. So right off the bat, you're going to come in with a nice lead in that area.
I love it. I totally agree too. And like I relate, you know, Lauren was mentioning the art majors. In undergrad, I was dance, and we never learned any of this, right? And I had to go back to grad school to get even half of what you guys are learning now. So I think you'll definitely be in position to take on any industry in any field. So, this is great. So now we're moving down the line. So you guys graduated, right? Which is great. You have your degrees. You're living in the real world. What was that transition like? Again, coming from the closed school and our support and our innovation to, working or innovating in Philly.
I thought it was going to be a lot more difficult when I was a freshman. I was thinking that starting a job would be like that next step, that would be that push, because we've been in school our whole lives until then. Like, what do I do next? But I felt like with my Drexel education, not only closed school, just from Drexel overall too, it really was a smooth transition. I was used to doing work by working in my co-op, and it was just like going from what I've been doing to what I've been doing just for the rest of the time and not having classes. And it was a really smooth transition because of like what we've learned in the classes too. We learn not only just how to do things, we've learned how to do things in that perspective, like in the perspective of working in that industry and working as an entrepreneur. It wasn't that difficult of a transition, actually. I feel like this past year has gone really smoothly because of that, and it wasn't scary. It was pretty easy.
Yeah, about the same, right? I think for me, not too big of a transition, partially because when I transferred, I mean, you sort of feel as though you have to make up a little bit for lost time. So when I came to Drexel, like I did a bunch of social things at Emory. Like I said, okay, that was my time for that. But I think when I came to Drexel, I was pretty career oriented, startup oriented. So as far as a time input, I mean, I had already been putting in those hours, right? Trying to evangelize my own venture, staying up late, pulling all-nighters, going to things like that. I mean, so for me, I'm still doing those things. I think I'm still putting in as much time as I was prior, just focused in different areas. But yeah, one thing I'll say in retrospect really is that I did realize I could enter the work world sooner than I thought I could, right? And a part of me waited, hoping that I might have a startup that would sort of come to fruition at that point. And so I did keep myself a little bit away from the traditional work world in lieu of pursuing startups, right? Which, both have their advantages, but I think in retrospect, I realized that I could have been doing this the whole time. It's not that much more challenging than what I was doing before. The nature of the work is different, but I was always capable of it. I just didn't really kind of know it prior to graduating. And I could have said that same question with venture capital. I could have said, oh, I'm a operator. I don't have as much heavy finance experience. Those doors aren't necessarily going to be open to me. But applying the same process, trying to think outside of the box, find an opportunity, right? And in retrospect, realize I could have done it all along. But that's how it works, right? It's not a linear path. Sometimes you gotta go left before you go right a little bit. So.
Love it. Thank you, guys. So I just have two more questions for you, two formal ones, and then we have an amazing group of questions in the chat. So just to move forward with this. So again, you guys graduated, you started working in the real world. There had to be some challenges, right? I mean, many successes, but we also want to shed light on some of the difficulties and how do you overcome adversity. So you could each just share, what was the biggest challenge you faced? And again, this could be at the closed school or when you graduated. And what did you do to either overcome it or work towards overcoming it?
I can comment there. I think so for me, like I never grew any of the startups to the point where they were really heavy operationally. And I think when you get to that point, you have to concern yourself with so many different areas of the business. You're focused on growth and product development and customer discovery and marketing and sales, right? And I certainly concerned myself with those elements, but I think only to an extent because the businesses didn't become very operational. So that's one difference, right? So I'm not going to say it's a perfect transition, but I'm having to think about 5 different functional areas now, right? Where I think my preference was to really kind of hone in before. And that's the job, right? So regardless of the way that my mind works or what I tend to or enjoy, I mean, that's what I have to do, right? I don't think I'm the best project manager, but I recognize it's a super important skill set. And so there are certainly elements of that, you know, I have to juggle, keep a lot of balls in the air. I think more so than I did in college. So.
I think that my biggest struggle with that a lot of people I feel like are also still going through, and I'm still going through too, I feel like was just discovering exactly what it is that I want to do and where I could see myself. I feel like I'm still figuring that out too. But what I've done throughout my college career and also now in my professional career is thinking about talking to different people and getting information on different jobs, different perspectives of different parts of business and different like ways of doing things, and asking other people how they do it and how they're going through it, and getting a lot of perspective from other people is how I've really learned to just shape what I think is going to be best for me in my professional career and going forward, what I want to try next and what I want to do. It's still something that I'm working on getting to where I want to be, but definitely expanding your network and seeing what other people are doing and just talking to a lot of people and getting different perspectives has really helped me.
Love it. And this is great, guys. Now, my last question, but arguably the most important for overachieving students, right? And we all can be that. We're all entrepreneurs, even professors alike. We all share that. We're all type A. We're all very innovative. But it comes with a cost. So my question to you both is, what can you do to maintain healthy work-life balance? And, you know, this is advice that either you give yourself or that you would give our freshmen. But I wish that, again, at 18, somebody had stopped and told me this. So as of today, what is your advice for that?
It's a hard one.
Well, I can find myself sometimes doing that now too. Like my boss will tell me to put down an hour on my calendar just to not work. And I feel like that's super important for all of us. Just take a moment to relax and take that hour lunch break or take that hour of downtime that you really deserve. And I can hear myself in my head saying like, oh, you didn't work hard enough. You could be using that hour to get something else done, but you really deserve that hour. So take that hour. And also I've found even in quarantine, just figure out something that really relaxes you. Figure out something that puts you in a headspace where you're not thinking about the work that you're doing or the schoolwork that you need to do or something that you haven't gotten done yet. For example, like listening to music, you guys know the stuff that makes you relax. And really take an hour or just take maybe 30 minutes if you don't have enough time to just block out everything else and use that time for yourself. It's self-care is super important, even in your professional career.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Because I think if you're into startups, then you have a tendency to be a little bit obsessive, right? And that works to your advantage. It can also work to your disadvantage. I think in retrospect, I would maybe try to free yourself up from maybe the thinking that you have to be this budding, phenomenal, sort of successful entrepreneur by the time you're a senior, right? Because I mean, first off, it takes years to evangelize a venture, so it takes a while, right? But that success rates aside. So I think like that sense of urgency in terms of having to try to maybe think, you know, I defined my job after college as my startup, right? So I was really against the clock. And that you put time into one thing, you take it away from something else, right? So in retrospect, definitely, I mean, I do poetry, I do a ton of creative stuff that I think it would have been fun and great to get more involved with while I was there at Drexel, because once you leave, you're in the real world, you join everybody else. Right. And though you no longer have access to, again, that collective energy, you no longer have access to programs like that. And I think, you know, if you don't believe that you have to make that happen in 4 years, then you'll probably ease your mind a little bit to feel like it's okay to do those things, because it really genuinely is. You know, not to say you don't lose the drive, you don't lose the vision and the passion and the desire to learn, but I'm still, well, I'm still about a year out from graduating and still working on work-life balance, still trying to figure out how can I make time every week to say, okay, it's 5 p.m. on Wednesday. Now this is my time to just check in with friends, or this is my time to do. So again, it's definitely achievable and it's important. Don't overlook it.
Love it. I totally agree too. I think you almost have to use what we're used to and turn it around to benefit us, right? So scheduling everything out. So I started saying, okay, well, I'm gonna use that to my advantage then to schedule out my free time and time just for family or just to watch a show or just to dance or work out. So yeah, if you like to write, then write down those, blocks, but yeah, be intentional and set up those boundaries. You could work all day, but we're not built to do that. It's not good for us. So I'm really proud of you guys. And I have to say, I think you both have achieved it, or at least working towards it. Me knowing you both very well. I think you guys have made the transition really well. It's just inspirational to all of us. So, I want to say thank you both. So at this time, I would love to actually call in a few students who had some great questions for you in the chat. So I want to start with Harrison. Maybe you want to read your question.
Sure, Roger. Thank you. Yeah, Elliot and Lauren, I'm wondering, you guys have been involved in a lot of stuff at Biata and at the closed school. Were you involved in any of the companies in Biata? Did you start any companies? Did you join or help your friends? And did you see them start companies? And my second part of the question, what were some of the most motivating moments at close when you saw your peers overcome some kind of an obstacle?
I was not involved too much with any startups. I did have friends that had startups and I helped them with their startups. So a lot of my friends had their companies and they started them at Biata, and I would just give them my time whenever I had time to help them out with little things that they needed, or I would go and visit and talk to them, and they would talk about their ideas and I would give them just some feedback. And what was the second part of the question?
Most motivating, right?
Yeah, what was some of the most motivating moments? Yeah.
Motivating moments. Definitely when, so we have at Drexel, in the closed school, we had a startup day, and that was such a fun event. Even when I wasn't involved in it, I wasn't like presenting anything. It was such a fun day to go, and it was really motivating to see everybody, how hard they worked on their startups and how hard they worked even on just their presentations for that day. And everyone is just cheering each other on, and there's these big screens with everyone's names on them. It's a really fun day that motivates you to want to be that person that next year to present something or bring up an idea, or even just get involved and go to one of the people that presented and say like, hey, I have this idea that can help you, or I have this thing that will help you get to where you want to be. I don't know. It's a really great day, and definitely take advantage of it. And I think it's 2 days, or is it 1 day? It changed a couple times, but it's a great day or 2 days to join in.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like a festival now, and I think this year is going to be, remote, but yeah, very awesome event. I love it. Thank you for sharing that, Harrison. I see we have a few questions. Well, 2 different people here. So Caitlin, and then KD after that.
Hi. So I just kind of wanted to ask you guys a little bit about failure, because like how Elliot said, when you come here, you sort of expect by the end that you're going to be some great entrepreneur, but we all know that doesn't come without learning from our failures. So I just wanted to know what are some really memorable failures for you guys, and what are some great lessons you learned from those failures?
Yeah, I mean, that's the critical question, right? I think if I look at I tried seriously at 2 ventures, right? The experience of those ventures and those ventures failing, to chalk them up, those are probably my 2 biggest failures that I've drawn the most from, right? And I could look within each and say, okay, I learned about this at this one, but I think to highlight something, it's that you learn the theory in class and then you try to apply it outside. And that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where you'll argue back with the professor and you'll say, but it's not always as simple. It's not always sort of as A to B. And that's when it's that context and that frame of reference, realizing how challenging I think it actually is to go and do it, that will inform sort of your future decision making. So I had two companies, right, that ultimately didn't find product market fit, right? Big reason why companies fail is because they don't find product market fit. You don't execute correctly. Maybe timing's not on your side. Number of those things were certainly true there. But I think that the actual experience of going through it and now having seen it from the other side of the table, because it's such a personal thing. The startup is your baby, right? And so you can't see the own flaw. It's so hard to see the flaws in your baby. But the crazy thing about sitting on this side of the table now since graduating is I've seen like 1,000 babies. And so I can look at this baby and I can say, well, I know it seems personal and I know it seems like this is the best, thing in the world, but that frame of reference, ultimately is what you have to try to escape a little bit, right? And you have to try to like de-risk your assumptions. And if I never tried doing that, then I would never have this frame of reference now. And it's because I tried to do that and had some success in doing so, but ultimately wasn't conclusive. That's trying my hand. I think to distill it down to two things, you got to just try your hand at something. And the startup itself, my past startups were failures, but you learn so much from them. And, we could pick aside time and I could share, 10 key things from each that I didn't know prior that I'm glad I did.
Thank you so much. Lauren, did you have anything to add?
I haven't worked in any startups that have had, I've been close enough to experience like their failures, but in my career, failures that I have faced have been just maybe starting something that I really didn't see myself liking for the rest of my career, wanting to do. And something that I've really learned from is you have to test those things out. You have to be doing those things that you're not going to be 100% into or 100% loving. And that's just a part of learning how to ready, set, fail, as one of our courses was. You have to learn to take those failures and take those even personal failures that you feel like were not the best thing for you and learn from it and take the parts of it that you did like and then move on to something that embodies all of that and then something new. And maybe you have a failure in that new job or that new position where you don't like that or you don't feel like that's something that you're going to excel in. And then you take the points that are good in that and move on. It's always about, as we said before, learning and taking the things that you learned and moving it to the next part of your life or adventure.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. That was really great advice.
Thank you, guys. I'm taking notes too. New school and us definitely need this inspiration today. So thank you so much. So we're just going to take two more questions for the sake of time. So we have Katie Gorman, and then after that, we'll close out with Sal.
So my question is, what co-ops did you do, and what did you learn from each of them, or just one of them? And then how would you say they've influenced or helped you in your current career?
So I did one co-op. I know that a lot of people do 3, but I chose to do the one co-op program, and I did it at Comcast. And I worked with a team that I actually still work with today, which is I worked with them this morning. And I've learned so much from my co-op. You really don't know how things work until you're thrown into it. You have to experience it head first and just I learned how to really communicate with other people that have been working in a professional setting for years and don't know how to talk to someone who's not really experienced working in a corporate job. And I've learned so much of how to just carry yourself, your co-op really prepares you for the real world, or the real world as it's called. But it makes that transition from college to working in a job or working even in a startup so much easier, because you're getting that experience that nobody can really teach you in a classroom. You don't have that one coworker in a classroom that's super difficult to deal with. I'm sure you might have a group member, but it's really different when you you're thrown into it and you're thrown into that job. So co-op doesn't really it makes it so that you're not really worrying about schoolwork too much. You're just worrying about learning from that job and learning as if it's a classroom. You're learning what to do when you're in that setting. So co-op really helped me to even learn what I want to do. It helps you learn more than you could in the classroom.
Yeah, and so for me, I took 2 co-ops. I think learning definitely true for both, but the way I looked at the first is probably more about passion, and I think the second one was more about leverage. And that comes down to, I think, the timing of when I took them, right? First co-op for me was when I joined Drexel. So that was an awesome opportunity to take 6 months with the co-founder to build what I set out to build. And again, like that, to the last question, that's where that failing happened. That's where that learning happened. Like that was awesome. You can imagine just taking 6 months and just devoting yourself entirely to that purpose. You'll learn a ton through it. What I didn't learn is, I didn't learn structure. I didn't learn the way that corporate teams work and function. I didn't learn what it was like to navigate with coworkers and colleagues that, you might just know a face in the crowd. And so the second co-op, I entered late. So I did C round right before I graduated almost. And for me, I said, so that was a difference, right? For me, I said, okay, I need to use this co-op as leverage. Because on paper, I knew I needed to demonstrate more direct experience in finance. So found a co-op that was tangentially related to that. Awesome sort of experience for sure. But again, I wouldn't be here if I didn't take that second co-op. I mean, hands down, that was the first kernel for like my path into venture, which started earlier with my path on entrepreneurship. But I took that co-op knowing that that's sort of what I wanted to look for. And that's kind of what it looked like. And so when I got it, I tried to really just use it as leverage. And, it's funny, I've seen it change. So some people think I'm like a finance major or something, and I really don't know that much about it. But I was able to kind of leverage it through the co-op. So that's how I decided. And by the way, quick plug, Hamilton Lane is a great co-op, private equity company out of Bala, 300-person company. And there's a team there that is a small 5-person team that I believe would love a closed school student to be in that position as long as it's open. And it's phenomenal corporate innovation experience. It's great tangentially aligned with venture and investment experience. So just quick plug for that. I'm not paid at all. It's shameless self-promotion, I suppose. But yeah, that's the way I thought about it and approached it.
And actually, just to ask a question, sorry, Roger, to jump in. Elliot and Lauren, would you both be okay if we provided maybe your LinkedIn profile and email to these students in case they have any questions? That way, when it does come time for them to start applying for co-ops, maybe you could be a good resource in terms of what that, the companies you work for, what the experience was like, kind of just serve as like another mind to meld with.
Always happy to.
Yeah, 100%. Please share mine and like email, LinkedIn, like anything, because I'm super happy to help, and connections add me. It really helps you get where you want to go. So feel free to reach out to me. Any questions, even like, how are you? I don't know. Something. Ask me anything. I don't mind.
And about questions, I'm sorry, I don't want to divert. I did want to mention this though. So having been sort of a college entrepreneur, tried my hand twice, and it's funny seeing a bunch of entrepreneurs now, but sitting on the other side of the table. There are so many things that I realize now I wasn't doing. And I realized where I was off much more now than I had then. And it's hard to see, but just to leave you with one of those little kernels, so to speak, answering questions is really hard, like really hard. Like when you're in the middle of a pitch, regardless of if it's a job interview or if it's a startup, I think the art of being able to answer a question concisely, directly, and not dance around the answer is something that takes practice. And that is something that I can tell you firsthand. If I meet with 10 startups, 9 founders are not doing that, right? So if I ask them, hey, tell me about your revenue today, right? And the objective reality is they're pre-revenue. They have no revenue. But instead of giving me that bottom line up front, right, they'll end up sort of saying, oh, well, we won this startup competition. And it seems like they're doing a good job of BSing from their perspective. And I did that too. But it's so transparent. And so I just would, there's a bunch of other stuff happy to share, but that's one of those things I think at a basic level, the ability to ask good questions is a critical part of the entrepreneur's tool belt, but also practicing how you answer those is something that I think can separate you, and few people actually do well. I know it sounds obvious, but I promise you it's not happening.
Mm-hmm. You're preaching. I love it. This is so it's just a learned skill, And communication majors are great at it, but like you said, for everybody else, we're not traditionally taught that. So, Elliot. And then we're going to close out today with Sal.
Okay, so Elliot and Lauren, so like what did you guys, if anything exactly, like what did you do to like make sure you stayed creative and like thinking outside the box, like either like while you were in school or just like in your professional life, just to like stay creative? Like, is there any specific things you do or did?
To stay creative. Yeah, I mean, so Lauren, what about that? So I still use convergent and divergent brainstorming today, right? So that's something, I forget the Dr. Oz class specifically, but there's a great class on the way to think, basically teaching you the way to think and brainstorm. And I would say like that class I definitely still use today, because when we're in the middle of a new session and somebody goes, all right, take out your pens and paper. How are we going to approach this? I think having some structure in the way that you think, because brainstorming, I think is just inherently, it's just nonlinear. There's so much coming at you, and it does take sort of a person that has some understanding of, okay, this might be a better way to do things. So that's something, but staying creative in general. I mean, I do music, I do poetry. For me, that's not been as much of a problem because I'm decently creative. I'm not like some phenomenal artist, but it's a part of my personality. So for me, in my off hours, that's how I've spent my time writing music, things like that, certainly. But from a business standpoint, I think the way to think and brainstorm has been helpful for sure.
I totally agree. There was this awesome class that we took. You guys will see when you get your course list that there's so many great classes that you can take and even spread them out so you can take some awesome classes throughout every year. But so in order to stay creative just in my job, I usually start to make lists whenever I notice something that could be changed. And even in my job, I have a meeting later today. We're talking about a new tool that we started using and what we don't like about it and what we want to change about it. And so I constantly start keeping lists, even if I'm not really sharing it with anybody. Sometimes I don't even share it with my boss. I just write down what you think that could change and what you think is great about it. And it's constantly making my brain move and work with different ideas of how things can be pushed forward and better than they were before, even in a company that's been established for years. You can keep doing that by even just writing it down. I know some people don't like writing things down, like writing them in their notes on their phone, but I write it in a notebook. I feel like it just visually looks better in a list that way, and just like lets my brain process it in that way, like when you write things down. And then to stay creative outside of work, I just work on my hobbies. I like to sew, and so working on designing different outfits and just taking like a concept, for example, like in cosplays, you can take a concept of a character and then add your own spin on it. Even that is entrepreneurship, adding your own spin on something and taking a product that was already there and adding something to it to make it even better. And it could be even better in your own way. And so I do it.
And just to say on that, right, like that's totally true. The list activity, right, of capturing things that people are telling you as a founder, you're going to be doing that too, right? People are going to giving you suggestions, and if you don't sort it accordingly, you're just going to forget, right? And it's like you're not going to. I knew one startup 3-person team for 5 years. They had a running list of every time somebody said, "Oh, you should talk to this person. Oh, you should talk to this person." They captured it down. After 5 years, that list was almost 2,000 people long. Now they didn't get back to everyone, right? But my point is it was a process, right? It was a part of capturing something and saying, okay, this has, this is unpolished. This has a place. I need to sort it, right? And you can do that in work too. So doesn't surprise me.
Cool. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
I could just jump in and say one more quick thing about the co-op.
Yeah, Jonah.
That I'm sure Elliot and Lauren can certainly attest to, is that sometimes it's not always like the most perfect, beautiful, amazing experience. Sometimes it's really difficult. And that's really, really valuable because it teaches you how to handle stress and how to handle conflict. And sometimes it teaches you maybe that you're not interested in that certain industry. A lot of times this is a way to test the water and figure out, okay, I don't really want to do that industry anymore. So it's really, really valuable because, you are off the hook in 6 months. You're not on a, sort of full-time contract with any company. So, definitely remember that a bad co-op is super, super valuable.
That's what it's all for, to learn what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're certainly not good at, and all the in between. So, and that is why Drexel students have like a 95% employment rate after graduation, because you go into the workforce prepared. You know what you're getting yourself into, you know how to handle yourself professionally. And I know that we did have a couple of other questions about the co-op. So, incoming students, you'll have the chance to talk to your peer leaders during your small group work to learn a little bit more about that. So just wanted to add that. And then Roger, we'll wrap it all up.
Yeah, so thank you guys. I think this is incredible. Just to recap, we talked about the college experience, coming in, being really entrepreneurial, but a little bit afraid, as we all would be. But then just meeting people, making connections, networking, and really building up a career within the university, serve these two alumni extremely well in their current professions. And they're still staying creative, they're still being hopeful, but they're also being realistic and realizing that like we're all in the new normal, but they're doing what they need to do to make that work. So again, we really, really appreciate you guys and all that you did. We're also going to provide their LinkedIn profiles and addresses for you. And I see Professor Sacco also put a link for Startup Fest that we mentioned earlier too. Again, like Julia said, you'll be talking to your peer leaders about co-op. So again, guys, this is just the beginning, but please join me in thanking Lauren and Elliot.
Yay!